Welcome back to another podcast of Learn English with Mike. I hope everyone's doing well out there and am looking forward to another English lesson. Today I thought we would talk about just some vocabulary and phrases that I heard recently that I think would be helpful to talk about and go over some meanings, definitions, as well as some phrasal verbs and expressions. So kind of same old, same old. Have you heard that phrase before? It's something we say when somebody asks, what's new or what's going on, and you say, same old, same old. It's like, the same thing's been going on, same old, same old. So that's a very popular phrase we like to use. Anyway, going on to our first phrase for today was something I heard. I don't know where I heard it, but it was the phrase, it comes with the territory. Comes with the territory. So when we say something comes with the territory, we're generally talking about kind of the responsibilities you have that are just part of a certain thing. So, for example, if you work as a security guard and you have to deal with a difficult situation, and you have to maybe kick somebody out of a store because they're not behaving right, and somebody who works in the store says, "Hey, I'm sorry you had to deal with that. That's too bad, but thank you for your help." That person might say, it comes with the territory. It means like it's part of my job. It comes with, being in the line of work that I'm in. It comes with the territory. Basically meaning, I do this work and this is just a part of it, right? Um, Another way we might use that is like if you are learning English and someone says, "Oh, it's so hard to learn languages because, you know, you have to have so many embarrassing moments where you don't know how to communicate. You feel like you're communicating like a kid." And you can say, "Yeah, it comes with the territory." It's just kind of a way of saying, "Yeah, it's just a part of the process, It comes with, um, you know, the the hard work it takes to learn a language, but it also is part of a reward." So we'll say it comes with the territory. All right, and moving on. This one's a vocabulary word. It's a compound word, right? It's the word overlap, and I heard it today and just thought it was a good one to teach because it's kind of an interesting word in that it is a compound word, and it's just an interesting way we use the English language, right? So when something overlaps, for example, if two songs are playing at the same time, you might say one song is overlapping the other. You might also say um, if, I don't know, if two things kind of conflict with each other or are happening simultaneously, we'll say they overlap each other, right? So, um, for example, when you're talking about your schedule, you might have two things going on at the same time. Say you have two classes that overlap, so you can't take both classes because the class is only available at 10 in the morning, and you also have another class you need to take, and that is only available at 10 in the morning as well. You say, darn it, these two classes overlap. They happen simultaneously, right? Overlap. So you can't, unfortunately, do both. So that is another popular phrase we will use, to overlap. It's not really a phrase, it's more of a term. And a compound word, you're putting together the word over and lap. Lap is one of those words that has two meanings, like every word in the English language. But lap would be like when you're running, right? And you run around a track, you run one full circle, we say that is a lap, right? So how many laps have you ran? You run laps, you're on your last lap when you're running around for the last time. Those are called laps. So those are very, very interesting phrases that we have. And then while I'm on that note, I might as well talk about this phrase about taking a victory lap. So this is a phrase that we'll use when we are talking about kind of celebrating, right? Maybe you did something good, you're being celebrated at work, and you kind of walk around and, kind of let people praise you, tell you did a good job. That's kind of what a phrase is. It's kind of a phrase that we use where we say, I'm going to take a victory lap. It's kind of like, imagine somebody who's running a race and they finish the race, they win the race, and then they do what we call is a victory lap, where they just run one more time around the track and people clap for them, and we call it a victory lap, right? Because they're just celebrating their win, right? But we talk about this kind of figuratively too. So if you work a job and you get a promotion, you could maybe take a victory lap around the office. So that is a victory lap. Then we have the second definition of the word lap, and that is like basically when you're sitting down, you and your thighs are somebody sitting on them, right? We refer to that as your lap as well. So for example, if you're a kid, your parents might have you sit on their lap, and their lap is basically that part of your thighs, right? The front part of your legs, but it's really kind of a specific word referring to when you are sitting down and your legs create kind of a seat for someone. So you are essentially creating another seat, and we call that a lap. So that's the second meaning. Another way you can look at this is on like Christmas. When you go to visit Santa Claus, you sit on Santa's lap and tell him what you want for Christmas. So that's another example of where you might encounter the word. Back in the day when rules weren't so strict about driving and seatbelts, sometimes you would maybe sit on someone's lap if there weren't enough seats in the car, right? You would sit on top of the other person and sit on that person's lap, we would say. So that is what a lap is, the second meaning. So you'll find that in English, we unfortunately have multiple meanings for one word. It's a blessing and it's not, because, it can be kind of confusing, but at the same time, it's less vocabulary, new vocabulary you have to learn, because you learn one word and often you now know that word and can use it to mean 3 or 4 or 5 different things. So that is the word overlap and the phrase to take a victory lap. Now we're going to go ahead and talk about another phrase, which is a knockoff, right? So you'll probably know the phrasal verb knock off, like to knock someone off of something. It's kind of to push someone or, make somebody lose their balance, lose their stability on an object. You can knock that person off. And then we also use it like if you're getting annoyed with your little brother or sister, you can tell them, hey, knock it off. It means stop doing what you're doing. Knock it off. So that is another way we will use to knock off or knock it off. And then there's also another unique way that I came across, which is a knockoff, which is an adjective really, and it's to describe something that is not authentic, right? Not genuine. It's a knockoff. It's kind of a weird word, but it just basically means like it was knocked off of something else. It was spawned after something else. So we'll call it a knockoff. So like a pair of fake sunglasses might be a knockoff of a regular brand, or some sort of song that's kind of a cover or sounds similar to a really popular song, we could say, oh, this is just a knockoff, right? Let's say, for example, somebody does a song that sounds a lot like, I don't know, sounds a lot like the Beatles, right? Or Tom Petty. And you say, oh, this is just a Beatles knockoff. It means they kind of copied them and just kind of knocked off their style and made a new song. So we call it a knockoff. It's not very authentic. It's not very original. It's just a knockoff. And with products too, like shoes, sometimes we might call a pair of shoes that are like styled after a very popular brand, like say for example a Nike shoes. We might say, oh, this is just a Nike knockoff, right? And that means that the generic shoemaker is just copying Nike, right? So we'll call it a Nike knockoff in that example. So that is knockoff. And then moving on, another phrasal verb we'll look at is to touch up. To touch up. So again, these are all just kind of random. The other day I had more of a theme with the word to roll. But today it's just kind of a list of verbs and phrases that I have taken note of and heard today. So the one to touch something up. So that means to kind of repair something or make something look better, make something look nicer. We'll say, I'm going to touch it up. So this is commonly used when talking about, repairing something or maybe painting something. You need to touch it up a little bit, right? Or if I'm doing a performance, somebody might even say that about your language skills. Somebody might say, you need to touch up your English a little bit. Or maybe touch this homework up a little bit. It just means to kind of improve it, not drastically, but just make it a little nicer. And yeah, we'll often use that with painting to say, we have to touch this paint job up, So it just means to kind of get the spots that got missed and make it look really sharp. But again, you could talk about that with music. If you're a performer and you do music, you might need to touch up your performance a little bit. Kind of like be polished, polish it up, make it better. Get rid of the flaws, basically. So we'll say to touch it up. All right, and next one. The next one is a word that I heard, and that word is jagged. So I thought that was a good vocabulary word. Jagged is like something that's rough, right? Like a knife that has a lot of sharp points could be a jagged knife. So that is jagged. I don't know if you'll remember this, but there used to be a R&B artist, rapper named Jagged Edge, who did a lot of songs, I think in the 90s and 2000s. I don't know if he's still doing music, but his name was Jagged Edge, and that's often how we will talk about edges that are rough. We'll say they're jagged. It's usually like they're sharp and pointy. So think of a bread knife, yeah, right? That has a very jagged edge. We'll also say that's serrated, right? Another vocabulary word for you, pretty specific to knives. But yeah, something that is jagged is something that is sharp and pointy, right? Not smooth, basically. So that's a good tip when you are learning languages in general. If you don't know a vocabulary word, right? You're trying to say something, you're trying to express yourself, and you don't know a certain word, you can always just say you know what the opposite is. Well, you can just say not whatever it is, right? So I said not smooth is jagged. So if you were describing something that's jagged and you didn't know the word jagged, you could always say something that's not smooth. If you know the word smooth. And so that is a very helpful tip. I find it very helpful anyway when I'm trying to speak a language. It's not ideal. You want to have the best vocabulary, but it is a good way to express yourself and be understood. And that's always important. I always say that the most important thing, in my opinion, is to be able to communicate, to express yourself, to be understood. It doesn't really matter, if you speak the language like a native. I know a lot of people fixate on that idea. Fixate meaning they get obsessed with the idea of speaking like a native. But honestly, people who have been speaking languages for many, many years still don't always sound like natives. So, when it's your second language, it is hard to achieve that native sound without really having grown up speaking the language. You can come close, but from my experience, I've seen that with a lot of people, even people who speak English, for example, very well as a second language, they don't necessarily sound like a native. There's certain nuances in their pronunciation that I can tell, okay, this person isn't a native speaker, or this person is speaking English as a second language. So never be too fixated on trying to master the language to sound like a native, because that's really hard to do, and especially with a language like English, it's spoken all over the world. It's really, hard to really identify what even a native speaker is going to sound like, because it really depends on what sort of accent you're going for and all of that. So it's definitely not something you want to obsess with when learning English. You want to be able to communicate and express yourself, and it's something you always will improve on and learn new vocabulary. So that is the most important thing. Just communication is key. That's my motto. All right, well, that's it for today. Just a quick little podcast there to let you know some of the phrases and verbs I heard today. Trying to do this a little more often to just keep people up to date with new phrases and keep kind of a constant stream of information coming. So hope that's helpful. Hope you enjoyed the list of vocabulary and phrases today, and let me know if you have any questions, and we will see you next time. Keep studying and keep learning.